All right, good afternoon. In a short while, we'll be joined by my guest, Margot van der Velden, who is the World Food Programme's Regional Director for West and Central Africa. She'll be here to speak to you about the humanitarian situation in Nigeria. Earlier today, our colleague Khaled Kyari, the Assistant Secretary General in the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, briefed the Security Council on the situation in Gaza, saying that it is long past time for the fighting to end, for adequate humanitarian aid to enter the Strip, and for the recovery and reconstruction to begin in the context of a return to a political path towards a two-state solution. He said that today the situation inside the Strip, especially for women and children, is more dire than any other time during this crisis. Mr. Kyari also talked about the situation in the occupied West Bank, which he says remains deeply concerning, with high levels of violence driven by ongoing Israeli military operations, many involving civilian casualties and extensive damage to homes and infrastructure, attacks by settlers against Palestinians, and attacks by Palestinians against Israelis. He added that the upcoming ministerial meeting to support a two-state solution, co-hosted by France and Saudi Arabia, is key to highlighting international consensus around these goals and reaffirm the principle of sustaining the two-state solution. Turning to the situation in Gaza, and I can tell you that our humanitarian operations in Gaza are currently under severe strain. Aid workers face severe security risks, crossings remain unreliable, and critical supplies are routinely delayed or blocked. We stand ready to seize the opportunity of a ceasefire to significantly scale up humanitarian operations across the Gaza Strip, as we did during the previous ceasefire. Our plans are ready and they are finalized. But to make a real difference, Israel must enable safe and unimpeded aid delivery, allow the entry of critical equipment and fuel, must open all crossings and restore movements along key supply routes. Humanitarian staff must be able to operate safely, people must be allowed to move freely, and supplies, including from the private sector, must reach all parts of Gaza. If these conditions are met, we will urgently prioritize providing food, water, shelter, medical care, and protection to the civilians of Gaza who have faced unimaginable hardship for far too long. Today, our resident and humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Dr. Ramiz Alakarov, visited the Gaza Strip, where he met with UN agencies and humanitarian partners in Deir al-Balah. During his visit, he expressed strong support for the tireless efforts of humanitarian workers who are continuing to deliver under extraordinarily difficult and dangerous conditions, including working in active combat zones amid persistent fear. Meanwhile, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warns that hunger crisis in the Gaza Strip has never been so dire. Today, 109 aid organizations warn that mass starvation is spreading across the Gaza Strip, with colleagues and those they serve wasting away. We and our partners report that aid workers are fainting from hunger and exhaustion. Deadly malnutrition among children is reaching catastrophic level. UNICEF reminds us that severely malnourished child is over 10 times more likely to die than a well-nourished child. Despite catastrophic conditions, our aid workers are continuing to deliver life-saving assistance wherever and whenever they can. However, OCHA stresses that to sustain these operations, including nutrition programs, the Israeli authorities must facilitate delivery of much more aid into and across all of the Gaza Strip without any delay. As of Sunday, our partners delivered 158,000 cooked meals through 64 community kitchens. This figure reflects a decrease of more than 70,000 daily meals compared to the previous day. On the health front, hospitals are overwhelmed and cannot cope with the influx of patients, including those injured by hostilities, due to lack of supplies and food. Earlier today, local health authorities tell us that in the past few days, several of their health facilities have been shut down due to lack of fuel. More hospitals, including Al-Shifa, are at imminent risk of shutting down within the next few days. Meanwhile, the UN Population Fund warns that severe food deprivation and a shattered healthcare system and immense psychological stress are leading to catastrophic birth outcomes for pregnant women and for newborns. From January to June of this year, births sharply declined, and 220 mothers died, more than 20 times the total number of maternal deaths recorded in 2022. At least 20 newborns died within 24 hours of birth, and a third of babies were born prematurely, underweight, or required admissions to neonatal intensive care when those facilities were available. Meanwhile, today, partners report that people with disabilities have no food, no assistive devices, and no health care. Meanwhile, measures must be taken to protect civilians, including the tens of thousands of people on the Strip who are older or living with disabilities who need assistance to preserve their dignity and their survival. Currently, Israeli authorities are the sole decision makers on who, how, and how much aid enters the Gaza Strip and the type of supplies that are allowed in. Logistical challenges are immense. To collect supplies that have reached any of the Israeli crossings around Gaza, all of which are fenced off and heavily guarded. Drivers need multiple access approvals as well as a pause in the bombing and for the iron gates to slide open. All too often, civilians approaching our trucks are shot at. To collect supplies safely, we must get reliable assurances that troops would not engage or be present along the routes of our convoys. The amount of aid that has been entering Gaza is only a trickle compared to the immense needs. Above all, we need a ceasefire to put an end to this devastating situation. And one important note on punitive measures announced by Israeli authorities against our colleagues from OCHA. We have full confidence in OCHA's professionalism and impartial work. Any punitive measures will only add to the obstacles preventing us from reaching people facing hunger, displacement, and deprivation. Turning to Syria, and in particular to the situation in Sweden, I can tell you that the second convoy of the Syrian Arab Red Crescent reached Sweden today, carrying critical aid that included food, water, wheat, flour, fuel, medicines, and health supplies. Our colleagues at OCHA coordinated with the Syrian Arab Red Crescent to prepare the convoy that also included supplies from UN agencies. OCHA continues to engage with authorities and partners to facilitate an interagency UN mission to Sweden as soon as security conditions allow, and further assistance is being mobilized by the Syrian Arab Red Crescent. Meanwhile, humanitarian needs in Sweden remain high. Electricity, water, fuel supplies, and telecommunications have been significantly disrupted. Bakeries have ceased operations due to shortages of flour and fuel. Local markets face significant shortfalls of food items. Critical shortage of clean water, hygiene kits, sanitary pads, baby supplies have also been reported. Many displaced families lack the most basic items such as mattresses and blankets. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that more than 145,000 people have now been displaced due to hostilities in Sweden Governorate. This includes people who have fled within Sweden and to neighboring Dara and rural Damascus governorates. We're working with partners to deliver a range of assistance to people displaced to Dara and rural Damascus, including health and protection services in addition to food and water. Mobile medical teams have provided more than 3,500 consultations, including trauma care, maternal health, and psychosocial support. Nearly 38,000 people have received food aid. Over 1,000 kits containing non-food items were distributed in Dara and rural Damascus, and that helped more than 5,000 Syrians. UN interagency missions to assess needs and provide assistance to both Dara and rural Damascus areas are planned for the coming days. Moving to Sudan, and I can tell you that we continue to be gravely concerned about the worsening humanitarian catastrophe and tightening access constraints across the country, particularly in the Kordofan region where hostilities continue to escalate. In South Kordofan state, citing local sources, our humanitarian colleagues at OCHA say that clashes erupted yesterday in the besieged city of Kadigli, which is the state capital. Armed individuals reportedly attempted to seize food from the main markets. As Sudan's hunger crisis deepens, the city remains cut off from humanitarian assistance, with the last supply route from neighboring North Kordofan now blocked. Meanwhile, West Darfur State, heavy rains and flooding threaten further disruption in the delivery of aid. Roads connecting the state capital of Jenaina, which is, as you well know, is located next to the crucial Adre border crossing with Chad, the road from Jenaina to Mornay and to Zalinje in central Darfur state are now impassable. Both of these towns are hosting large numbers of displaced people. Our humanitarian partners warn that continued rains may further cut off access in central and south Darfur state, making it even more difficult to reach people who need help so desperately. In North Darfur state, displaced communities and host families in the town of Tawila have come together to establish community kitchens, which are now feeding thousands of people who fled the violence in El Fasher. These kitchens have become a vital lifeline for those without any other access to food. However, they face chronic and severe funding shortfalls. Many of these are struggling to stay open. Some risk shutting down altogether due to the lack of resources. And as we mentioned yesterday, we and our partners are planning a major scale-up of support to people in Tawila, which requires $120 million over the next 3 months. Humanitarian access is further complicated by checkpoints, by taxes, by roadblocks, and bureaucratic hurdles imposed by local authorities, including the requirement for multiple levels of approval to establish the most basic of services for the population. Once again, we appeal for unimpeded humanitarian access across the whole of Sudan, more international funding to scale up the response, the protection of civilians and aid workers, and of course, an immediate cessation of hostilities. Just want to flag that a new $7 million cross-border project investing in water management, climate security, and peace building in the border areas of Mali, Mauritania, and Senegal was approved today for funding by the Secretary General's Peace Building Fund. This project, jointly developed by the government of the 3 countries, is one of the Peace Building Fund's largest and will be implemented with the support of UNICEF and the International Organization for Migration over the next 2 years. And again, a dire update from Haiti, where our colleagues in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that escalating violence and displacement continues to drive severe humanitarian needs across the country. The UN Children's Fund and their partners have screened more than 217,000 children for acute malnutrition since the beginning of the year, and more than 21,500 children have been admitted for treatment of severe acute malnutrition. This represents about 17% of the nearly 129,000 children who are projected to need life-saving treatment this year. Our humanitarian colleagues also warn that insecurity continues to constrain the humanitarian response, leading to access challenges, supply shortages, and the closure of health facilities. According to the latest analysis from the IPC, some of 5.7 million people were estimated to face high levels of acute food insecurity between March and June of this year. This represents more than half of Haiti's population. Beyond the nutrition crisis, Haiti's children also face an education emergency. As of mid-July, more than 1,600 schools remain closed in Haiti, which is an increase over 2/3 since the start of the year. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that without access to education, children are, of course, more vulnerable to exploitation and to recruitment by gangs. UNICEF has been providing learning opportunities to more than 16,000 children, including displaced children in temporary learning spaces. The agency has also reached over 100,000 children with mental health and psychological support. However, this is just a fraction of what is needed in Haiti. Our humanitarian colleagues also reiterate that the lack of funding is significantly limiting our capacity to address the crisis. Haiti remains, as I've said here many times, the least funded of our underfunded country appeals globally. More than halfway through the year, we've received less than 9% of the $908 million required for the response for this country. Lastly, just want to flag that this morning the Secretary General sent a message to the high-level segment and commemorative ceremony marking the 30th anniversary of the International Seabed Authority that took place in Kingston in Jamaica. In his message, the Secretary General noted that the international seabed area is not the domain of any nation. It is the common heritage of humankind. He said the deep ocean remains one of our last frontiers, adding it holds great promise, but also requires great caution. The Secretary General pointed out today the International Seabed Authority is navigating a complex challenge with care and clarity. He commends its commitment to finding balanced and effective solutions. Gabriel.
Thanks, Steph. Two questions. One is I took note of your comments regarding OSHA and the punitive measures announced by Israel. My question is, what will these measures, how will these measures, affect the UN's ability to carry out a humanitarian response in Gaza right now?
It makes things more complicated, right? That's the bottom line. It makes things more difficult. It makes things more challenging, and it's going in the wrong direction.
And a follow-up, during his remarks, Mr. Chiari said that regarding UNRWA, based on the current forecast, there is not enough money to sustain all operations in the field for UNRWA until the end of August. Another UN agency under attack, essentially, in Gaza. How does the Secretary General feel that this funding for UNRWA could affect UNRWA's work in Gaza?
I mean, again, less money, less work, less money, less people getting the aid that they need. UNRWA has been jumping from funding crisis to funding crisis for quite some time. We encourage member states to up their donations to UNRWA, which remains a critical part of our operations in the region. Edie, then Deji, then Benno.
Thank you, Steph. One more follow-up on the Israeli ambassador's comments about OSHA to the Security Council. He demanded that Tom Fletcher, the head of OSHA, immediately retract his claim that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. What is the UN comment reaction to that specific?
For him to have retracted, he would have had to have said it, which Mr. Fletcher did not, right? If you look at his remarks he made to the Council on 13th May, he called for decisive international action to prevent genocide and ensure respect for international humanitarian law. And whether it's Mr. Fletcher, whether it's the Secretary General, or anyone who works for the Secretariat, our position is the same, that the labeling of an event as a genocide is up for a competent court to decide.
And a second question. Israel's army is saying that the United Nations refuses to accept Israeli escorts in Gaza to deliver aid. I know you have addressed this before, but could you address this latest?
Well, I mean, we're getting into the theater of the absurd here. I think we have seen what happens when Israeli soldiers are near a UN convoy, right? We saw it. We saw what happened on Sunday in North Gaza. We saw the victims and we saw the death. The best protection for us is community buy-in. And to get that community buy-in, communities have to understand that trucks will come every day, that food will come every day, right? And that's what we're asking for. Deji.
Today, before the Ambassador General's announcement on the restriction of visas of the OSHA staffers in Israel, has the Israeli authority ever talked about this issue with any of the UN
Which
officials?
issue? The issue of visas?
The restrictions, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the issue, the challenges around the issuance of visas and the length of visas is an issue that has been discussed for quite some time.
But this announce of this 1 month not automatically extend, this is new.
I mean, listen, it's up to you to decide what is news. We faced challenges with visas before. It is the sovereign right of Israel to issue, like any other country, to issue visas or choose to issue or not to issue visas to staff, and we look forward to continuing our discussions with them on this issue.
So today, Ambassador Noon accused OCHA staff there, suggesting that they are under investigation, under vetting, and he even said that, even went further, saying that some of those staffers might have link with the October 7th attack.
Those are very serious accusations. Those are very serious allegations that were made, and we expect the Israeli government to then share whatever evidence they may have with us as quickly as possible.
Not yet.
So we can, I mean, we know as much as you do right now, right? And we saw with when allegations and accusations were get made against UNRWA, we announced them, right? And we took action. So we look forward to them sharing any evidence
Do you
with us.
worry that more institutions might be linked, has been accused to link to the October 7th attack?
These are
WFP,
allegations
UNICEF.
these are allegations that are thrown out. I mean, you know, we would like to be given information. If these allegations prove correct, then we would act on them decisively. Benno Schwinghammer.
Thank you, Stefan. I think you said it yourself. It seems like we are entering a phase of mass starvation in Gaza. I guess you agree with me that this needs an international response.
Well, we've been calling for international response. We've been calling for greater assistance.
Okay.
We've been calling for those countries who have influence over to help us.
I'm aware
get more,
of this,
okay.
but I think you can also always sound the bigger alarm bell. Why is the Secretary General not declaring a famine, for example?
Look, the issue of words matter within the UN, our world, right? Our diplomatic. The issue, the word genocide, right, is declared for us by a legal competent court. There is a whole UN mechanism, which also involves member states, called the IPC, right?
Yeah.
It's a scientific-based declaration. We will wait for their next report. I think that the Secretary General has been extremely vocal. I mean, just this week, spoke twice about it and raising the alarm. But you know, the unlocking of those metal gates that I refer to at the crossings is not a key that he has, right?
Mayor,
You may.
I understand. Thank you for
Yeah.
mentioning the IPC. The report now is valid to end of September, so I assume there is no one plan till then. Till then, it might be too late. So, isn't there a way to have a temporary report?
I
for
don't.
example?
Well, listen. We will. We all need to follow up with the IPC, which is a conglomerate of UN agencies, governments, and NGOs. But we don't need to wait for a report to see the suffering, to see the children that are wasting, to see the newborns that are dying. We know that is going. We've been reporting on it, right? And whether you use the word starvation, whether you use the term famine, whether you use the term hunger, people need help.
I mean, like we see it every day. We see every day the hunger, the hardship, the violence in Gaza, and it becomes the new normal. And I have the feeling people are not woken up anymore.
Well,
But
I mean, the fact that people are numb to suffering is tragic, right? And whether they are numb to the suffering of the people of Gaza, whether they're numb to the suffering of people in Sudan and in Haiti that we talk about, that gets completely underreported, not to mention underfunded.
Okay, last one, and then I shut
Sorry.
up. I mean, like, isn't this maybe a moment where all of these procedures you're talking about should be banned to change lives? Isn't there a way to step into front of the cameras and says, like, famine likely started, or something like this?
Listen, we don't need to wait for these things to act. And that has been the Secretary General's message. Yes, and then we'll go to Alex.
Thank you, Steph. A follow-up on OCHA and the Israeli government. This morning, Ambassador Danon of Israel at the stakeout lashed on OCHA, and he reiterated the allegations he had against its staff and everything. But he said also that there is 950 food aid trucks waiting on the Gaza side. How accurate is this number? And second, how many of these trucks belongs or destined for UN agencies?
We've been saying the same thing. There are a lot of trucks. There are a lot of supplies waiting at Karim Shalom, Karim Abu Salam crossing, and others. I've just described to you the procedure. Let me finish. I've just described for you the procedure on how we need, what it takes for us to get that aid. The Karim Shalom is not a McDonald's drive-through where we just pull up and pick up what we've ordered, right? There are tremendous bureaucratic impediments. There are tremendous security impediments. And frankly, I think there's a lack of willingness to allow us to do our work.
Thank you. Just to explain the rationale, that this is what he said. I'm not questioning because there is no third party that I can verify.
You asked me to respond to what was said.
But my understanding that these trucks have already crossed
we've explained this ad nauseum, right? There are trucks that come in from Israel. They go through a first checkpoint. They're in a sense of a no man's land or demilitarized zone, whatever you want to call it, inside the crossing. And then we have to come in with our own trucks. We have to be allowed to come in with our own trucks. The goods have to switch from one trucks to another. It's a very lengthy procedure, which we've explained a lot. Alex, and then we'll go to the screen.
Thanks, Steph. I got a couple questions. Firstly, on Iran. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister said that Tehran has agreed to receive a technical delegation of the IAEA in like 2 or 3 weeks. Could you please confirm that, or we should call Vienna?
Option number 2.
Of course. Another one on the meeting between the Secretary General and Hungarian Foreign Minister Szijjártó. Can we have a readout?
Yeah, we'll try to get you a readout.
Thank you.
I don't have a readout. All right, Abdelhamid, and then Jacob, and then we'll go back to Dish.
Thank you, Steph. I hope you hear me well. Yes, sir. Okay. I have 2 questions, Steph. First, on Khaled Khiari's statement. He said, talking about the West Bank, quoting, he said, what made things bad in the West Bank, attacks by settlers against Palestinians and attacks by Palestinians against Israeli. Do you think this is a fair statement to equalize between the attacks by settler and the Palestinian without mentioning even the army? Although he gave examples of attacks by Israeli security forces, yet in this statement, and as you just said, words matter. He didn't mention the army, he didn't mention ISF, the Israeli security forces, and he put them equal, the attacks by the settlers. And
Abdelhamid, it is your right, it is your duty as a journalist to pick apart everything that we say word by word. He delivered the remarks on behalf of the Secretariat, on behalf of the Secretary General. I don't take it as an equalization. In case you do, then feel free to write about it. What is your second question?
My second question, isn't time for the Secretary General and his senior staff to re-examine their relations with Israel? They attacked UNRWA, they killed so many staff, they attacked UN facilities, UN hospitals, UN clinics, UN cars, UN schools, and now they're attacking OCHA and senior staff. They also criticize UNICEF, WHO. Why not the Secretary General sit together with his staff and redefine their relation with the state, which is really waging a war against the UN, the way they were waging a genocide war against the Palestinians?
The Secretary General of the United Nations, especially in time of humanitarian crisis, doesn't have the luxury to say, I will not speak to such and such member state. We continue to engage with the Israeli authorities because it is part of the solution to a huge problem. It does not stop us from speaking out like I've been doing for the last 20 minutes against policies that have been imposed by the state of Israel against the UN, but we will continue to engage with Israel as we do with all 192 other member states and 2 permanent observers. Okay, Jacob.
Hi, thanks for having me on. With all of its flaws, and there are many, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been issuing these daily pleas to the UN to offer some sort of cooperation between agencies and GHF. Is there any sort of response you want to give to them and their pleas?
Listen, it's the same response we've been giving over and over again. There is enough work for many humanitarian organizations to work for us to work with. We welcome working with any other partners. All we ask is that those partners work based on the most basic humanitarian principles, one of them being that don't set up an operation that will increase the risk of people to be shot at or trampled while trying to get food. Also, we have a system that works. All we're asked is to be allowed to do that system. I don't think we need to add another layer of for-profit organizations. We need humanitarian partners, and we welcome working with any and every humanitarian partners that works along those bases. Okay, Deji. I need a vacation.
I'm going to give you an uplifting question anyway. So yesterday, Secretary General had a very long speech on the energy transition. In May, there's a report suggesting that China may have already peaked its emission due to the clean power, which means there's a surge of usage of electricity, but still the emission just reduced. And what's the response from the Secretary General?
Look, we want, I think the response from Secretary General is in his remarks, is that investing in clean energy, investing in renewable energy is the smart choice, and we encourage every country to do so. And
if he visits China, will he consider to try one of the Chinese electronic vehicles?
I don't know. He's visited China and he's taken the high-speed trains, I can tell you that. All right. Anybody else wish to speak? Good. I'm off for 2 weeks. I will see you